So today I'm actually going to be filming a coffee chat with myself because I've been getting a lot of LinkedIn requests on coffee chat, seeing it's graduation season, and there isn't really much resource about what it's like as a brand strategist or as a strategist at a brand agency. So a little about me, I got my undergraduate degree in information management from a school in Taiwan called National Jinan University. And upon graduation, I immediately pursued a master's in integrated marketing communications from Northwestern University. There I was focused mainly on brand strategy and content marketing. Then I started my first job in corporate America, and that was in account management and strategy at a shopper marketing agency. After a year of that, I went into brand strategy full-time. I was at an integrated marketing agency working in the branding department before now coming into a brand agency. It's now my fourth year as a brand strategist, and my role is a senior consultant in strategy.
Yeah, you had an interesting background, so I'm kind of curious to hear what drew you to it.
I discovered brand strategy on accident, was like, oh, this is a thing. What really drew me is just the blend of creativity, but also the science behind it, like human behavior, psychology. That was like always something that was interesting to me, even though I wasn't like a psych major. How people buy, how people think, how people are like loyal to brand, like the Apple cult and such. That always was something personally in my life I was interested in. I was firstly introduced to like strategy as a practice in agencies and how that partnered with the business, and I was like, oh, that's so cool, because you don't want marketing to be an afterthought, you don't want branding to be an afterthought, you want that to really be parallel and also guide your business decisions. Through that I was like, oh, I want to go into strategy. So I mentioned here that I was first drawn to strategy, but through trying to find jobs and in my career, I realized there was so much more to strategy. There's different types of strategists, like creative strategists, media strategists, web strategists, comm strategists, social media strategists, and so much more. Brand strategy is just like one type of it. And also within brand strategists, there's also, depending on the agency you're at, there is that brand creation piece. Some agencies are a little bit more focused on that, which is what I'm doing right now. There's also brand strategists that are more focused on brand activation and brand building, for example, at agencies that are focused on experiential or advertising. So just wanted to call that out. Branding is all we do. And with that, I get to learn a lot about this craft and the different pieces of the puzzle that all go into building a single brand. I get to also go a lot deeper. Before, I only thought that branding is like writing up like the promise and how you're making it sound as good as possible and just like creating the system, handing it off to the client. But then I realized there was so much more intricacies to it. There's hosting those workshops and making sure that you're capturing everything, you're bringing everyone in the client along. So there's a lot more learning from clients. And also, other than just like creating the strategy on the page, we also do like the governance, actually seeing like, okay, what's the next step after you create a new brand? You have to like educate the employees, you have to govern the brand, you have to make sure that the brand is used in the correct way and not being misused. So there's a lot to that I didn't really get to know about when I was in school and at like smaller agencies, but making sure that not only are we creating best in class brands, but making sure the brands stay best in class and like re-elevating the brand.
In terms of like your direct team, like on your day-to-day, like how many people are you working with? Who are you working with?
In the day-to-day, I work with project teams, so we would have different clients and I would work with different people on different clients. But in terms of the people that are staffed on certain projects, people on different departments, so I'm in the strategy team, and we would have also designers, we would have verbal like writers that help define like the naming, and they would define like the voice and tone and the messaging. We also have client managers that are the people that are guiding the project and working directly with the clients and making sure that we get what we get. And we also have the analytics team. That's kind of like the project team. And the number of strategists, verbalists, or anyone staffed on a specific project really determines based on how big the project is and what the specific client needs are. So for example, if a strategy heavy project, there might be more strategists staffed on it. We also have the corporate team and the new business team, but we don't work with them directly on projects. They get involved in the day-to-day.
Do you have like I don't know, I want to say like a favorite project, but even just something that you found unexpected? I'm like,
So I worked on a divestiture of a Fortune 50 brand.
We helped define the brand architecture. We helped name what the new companies are. I was involved from that in the very beginning, and even now, I'm still in the project team in charge of the strategy and bringing it to life in one of the companies. As this might sound, it's like, oh, you get to work on a big brand that everyone's heard of, and like the scale and breadth. It's a big project, so there's a lot of understanding their organization and their ways of working and how they interact with each other. We were able to do a huge quantitative survey. We were able to interview industry analysts and making sure we know what the market is thinking. We talked to customers, we talked to employees, we talked to like industry analysts, and it was just we were able to have all this data and all this input before making a brand decision. It's a huge project that just like touching different pieces of it, it's pretty amazing. I'm like nerding out.
I know you were so excited. This is really cute. Just to like backtrack a bit, how was your like application process into the first agency that you went into, especially with your more like unconventional background?
Going into like the first brand strategy job or even the first agency job, some skills that were really important to highlight. One was, as strategists are often involved in qualitative, so like interviewing the clients, interviewing the customers, and getting those inputs and extracting those insights. And competitive like research and audits that you've done, like brand audits, that's also just a good highlight. And your sensitivity with design and words, because the strategists are the people that start in the very beginning of understanding the client and then working with the client to define the strategy, but we also bring that strategy to life through brand identity, so design and what the brand sounds like. So we work with designers a lot and we work with writers a lot, so it's like highlighting that you understand words really well, you understand branding, and you do know design, and you're able to work very well with those teams. Sensitivity with data, so like working with analysts too and working with data, having comfortability in interpreting that, I think is like the hard skills that would be helpful to highlight.
Additionally, a soft skill that's super important is just presenting and storytelling, because a lot of times you have to present not only to your internal teams, but to your clients as well.
Any resources that you have found helpful in the past?
I can send you a few podcasts that I found were helpful.
There's one called Change of Brand.
That podcast interviews like the designers, the strategists, the writers that were involved in like monumental rebrands in the past, like Airbnb and like Dunkin'. That podcast really gave me a glimpse into like how different agencies work and also insight into decisions that was pretty interesting.
There's also a newsletter called Brand New that covers recent rebrands and their commentary on the design and strategy that go into the rebrands. It's a pretty good resource. It's only about $20 a year, and it sends weekly newsletters about what the latest rebrands are, so that you can really gain insight into what the new news are in branding and be able to really understand how people think about strategy and how people think about design in the real world.
What I did in the past, direct messaging them on LinkedIn and saying like, hi, I think I'm a great fit for this role, and I'm sure who the hiring manager is. I messaged them directly, and I think that helps, showing like initiative and proactivity. I think interviewing and trying to find that first job into strategy and like branding is kind of hard. So there's like people coming from like all different kinds of backgrounds, because there is like a standard background that's like, oh, you check the boxes and then you get like interviewed. But I think with strategy is like people come from design, people come from research, people come from backgrounds in politics. It's so different.
So definitely play up your unique experience and different skill sets that you have outside of just the brand strategy skills that I mentioned, because with there being no standard background, you can use anything to your advantage in playing up your uniqueness.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
I know brand strategy can be harder to understand from the outside, and it is a harder industry to crack into, but I was really lucky to have mentors help me throughout the way, so I thought I'd film this video to serve as a way to carry on the niceness I received at a bigger scale. The skills that I mentioned are just a couple of examples that I found really helpful throughout my career, but as I mentioned, there's 1,000 ways to get into brand strategy. It might be a winding path, but these paths and experiences will make you a better strategist when the time comes. I hope this video and the information I shared was helpful. Please let me know if there's any other questions in the comment section. I'll see you next time. Bye.